Welcome everyone to the City of Alameda Homelessness Strategic Plan Community Kickoff meeting. We're really happy to have all of you here with us this evening. Thank you for your patience as we were getting started. Um, we are going to start with our program in just a moment, but while we're waiting for some additional folks to enter the room, we wanted to go over a few tips about how we'll be using Zoom this evening as a part of our meeting. First off, we want to acknowledge that ASL interpretation and closed captions are available today. So if you need any ASL interpretation, please let us know in the chat and we will make sure to flag that so that we can put you in the appropriate breakout room when we engage in some of those breakout discussions. Um, we will be using the chat to monitor any questions that you may have. If you have any technical needs, you are welcome to reach out to our colleague Miguel in the drop-down list of folks that you can contact via chat. So please feel free to use that if you have any questions about how to use the functions here. Everyone has been placed on mute for the first part of our agenda this evening while we're going through some of our speakers and presentations. And then we will shift and allow people to come off mute when we're entering the breakout discussion phase of our agenda. If you have any challenges and you're having trouble with the Zoom chat or anything like that, you're also welcome to use the email address up on the screen. It's cityofalameda@homebaseccc.org. And that is another way that you can reach our team to make sure that you're getting any assistance that you need. And so I would like to also just acknowledge my colleagues on the call this evening. We've got myself. My name is Amanda Wehrman. I'm a deputy director with Homebase. My colleague Aram, as well as Devra and Miguel. All of us are available to help with any support that you need while you're on this Zoom call together tonight. So feel free to let us know and we can help you out. Okay. And with that, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our agenda. We've got a bunch of exciting things to put together for you tonight to kick off our community process around the Homelessness Strategic Plan. And we'll be starting with these welcome and introductions. We'll get into setting the context, and we'll be hearing from a couple of important speakers tonight. We'll also be doing an overview of the strategic planning process, so everyone's on the same page about how we plan to proceed through this together. We'll share a little bit of information about known community needs based on data that we have available about homelessness. And then we'll spend a lot of our time doing some brainstorming sessions in breakout groups around a few key issue areas together with some opportunities to report out to the larger group. And then we'll move on to next steps. So with that, I'd like to open us up with a quick poll just so we have a better understanding of who we have with us in the room this evening. So we're going to give folks just a few moments to respond to this poll. So select whatever option best indicates the group that you represent today. And we'll leave this open for just a minute and then we'll report back out so we have a sense of who's in the room. All right, we've got about 75% has responded so far. Okay. All right, so looks like most folks here are residents of the city of Alameda. Welcome. We also have some representatives from the nonprofit community as well as city government, the faith community, and others. So thank you all for participating in that poll so we have some sense of who's with us. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and we've got a couple speakers with us this evening who are going to share some context about why a strategic planning moment now, the important work that's been underway. And we're very honored to have with us this evening Mayor Ashcroft, who's going to give us a short welcoming statement to kick off our kickoff. And so we welcome her to give some opening remarks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and welcome everyone. It's lovely to see such a robust turnout on a Monday night to hear about this very important topic. So thank you for joining the kickoff to Alameda's new homelessness strategic plan. Based on feedback from community members like you, the City Council has made addressing homelessness and housing insecurity one of our top priorities. In the past 2 years, the city has launched a number of new programs to help the unhoused and those at imminent risk of losing their homes. We are aware, however, that we are just scratching the surface. From 2017 to 2019, the unsheltered population in Alameda, based on the point in time count, rose from 204 to 231 individuals. And then in 2020, along came COVID-19. In the last year, we believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has left even more residents at risk of or directly experiencing homelessness. These community members, they are our neighbors, our family members, and our friends, are in crisis and they need our help. The city of Alameda is committed to supporting them and helping them find housing. This strategic planning process is an important part of this effort. It will help us come together as a community to develop a shared vision and goals to address homelessness in Alameda. This is a community-wide problem that requires a community-wide solution. So thank you for joining us tonight to be part of the solution, to share your thoughts, your concerns, and ideas about homelessness in Alameda, and again, for being part of the solution. And now I have the distinct pleasure to introduce you to Anna Bagtis. She is amazing. She is a community development manager with the City of Alameda who has been instrumental in coordinating our city's homelessness response. Anna will tell you about the city's current programs to support our unhoused neighbors, and I know you will be as impressed with Anna as I am. So thank you again for being here, and Anna, the floor is yours. Hi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mayor, for the introduction and teeing us off with a really nice context on the homelessness issue in our city. I was hired by the City of Alameda about 3 years ago in March, so next month, in 2018. And at the time, there were not very many programs offered in the city aimed directly at homeless individuals on the streets. The city was funding street outreach through the contract with Operation Dignity. Because of in 2016, some of you probably recall that there were over 30 people who were displaced at Gene Sweeney Park because of the development. And Alameda County at the time was already funding Building Futures as the coordinated entry system and the Housing Resource Center for the city of Alameda. Other than that, the city was trying to figure it out, working with the Housing Authority, the city's Social Service Human Relations Board, as well as community development. The city actually created a plan, and that was adopted by the City Council in 2018 called the Alameda Homelessness Report. As the new coordinator of homeless services for the city, this document served as my marching orders, basically, because the report not only outlines the state of affairs of homelessness in our city, it provided recommendations with specific programs and services to prevent individuals and families from losing their homes, as well as support people who are already experiencing homelessness in our city. To be able to implement these recommendations, however, we need funding. And the stars must be in alignment at the time, because by the end of 2018, there was an infusion of funding from the state allocated to local jurisdictions to respond to local cities' most immediate emergency needs of to serve its homeless population. The funding is called Homeless Emergency Aid Program, or HEAP, and the city of Alameda received $756,524 in HEAP funds. And the city went through a community stakeholder process to get input from the the different stakeholders, including the business community, the public, community-based organizations, and what have you, to how to spend this money and what services we should provide. The Social Service Human Relations Board created an ad hoc task force to oversee this process. And in the last 3 years, the city also, through the city council, has been very supportive of the different initiatives to support our homeless and continue to fund services in addition to the HEAP funds. Today, several of the programs outlined in the 2018 homelessness report have been implemented. We now have over 20 different programs available in the city that targets preventing homelessness while assisting those who are currently experiencing homelessness on the streets and in encampments. Examples of the services include a day center right here at Alameda Point, the Safe Parking Program, also co-located at the day center. We have a Dine and Connect program through partnerships with our faith-based community. We have 4 churches that are serving meals to our homeless population. We have street outreach that continues today. We have shower, laundry programs, parking meter for the homeless. If you've seen those bright orange meters, those are intended to get donations from the community that will go directly to homeless individuals. We have rental subsidies and assistance, motel vouchers, mobile health clinics, street team that provides mental and medical services with the county, and a bunch of other services. The newest service we have, you probably have heard of this, is Feed Alameda, which is a partnership with local restaurants, and local restaurants produce these meals that would now serve to the homeless population every Wednesday. And that was in large part because of contributions from the community members. So I wish I could take credit for all of these creation of programs, but this was a collective effort by many organizations, including city departments, the Alameda Police Department, homeless liaison officers, public works, fire, ARPD, library, community development, our churches, community and other faith groups that host Dine and Connect. Business associations, WABA and DABA, are part of our CARES team. Nonprofit organizations, of course, like Building Futures, Operation Dignity, the Food Bank, 211, APC, or Alameda Point Collaborative, St. Vincent de Paul, and on and on. If you look around you, however, not just in Alameda, but pretty much anywhere in the region, as the mayor said, homelessness persists. And job loss, which is a major contributing factor to homelessness, has dramatically increased because of COVID. We are bracing for the ripple effect of the pandemic on our housing insecurity. This is why we're here tonight. We have a lot more work to do. The HEAP funding from the state is ending next month in March, and long-term planning is very critical at this juncture. The programs and services that we have established so far that address the immediate and short-term needs of our unhoused population, we need to look at longer-term strategies to address these issues, especially around housing insecurity and to reduce and eventually end homelessness in our city. We need to pick up where we left off on the homeless plan that we created 3 years ago and look to the next 5 years to address the issue. Your participation is very critical in that process tonight. We thank you for your time and presence, and we cannot wait to hear your great ideas and to really share what we can do together as a community here in Alameda. Thank you for your participation tonight.
Thank you so much to Anna and to the mayor for those inspiring words and setting the tone for this important conversation tonight. We're now going to move into talking a little bit about the strategic planning process. Aram, if you could advance the slides a few. Thank you. wanted to start by just providing an overview of the work that's been underway and is continuing um, past this evening. So we are working on a 5-year strategic plan to address homelessness in the city of Alameda. As I mentioned, there are a number of us here tonight from an organization called Home Base. We're a nonprofit public policy firm that works to support communities in addressing homelessness. And we're very honored to be supporting the community with our technical knowledge of best practices, as well as our services as a third party facilitator of processes like strategic planning. So that's our role in this process. And some of the initial considerations that were brought to the table around this strategic planning process were making sure that it centers around issues related to equity, thinking about having robust community outreach and engagement, of which tonight's event is one such example. Having a shared vision that emerges from the strategic planning process that the community can coalesce around in terms of strategic goals and action steps to move forward together, as well as interdepartmental and interagency opportunities for coordination and collaboration coming out of the planning process. And so what you can see on the next slide is an overview of some of the objectives of our strategic planning process, that we want goals and strategies that are going to be measurable. And we'll talk a little bit more about the data related to homelessness. About addressing equity as an integral part of the plan, as I mentioned, empowering and engaging the community to be a part of the solution. As I mentioned, that interdepartmental shared vision, engaging cross-sector partners, and also integrating the perspective of people with lived experience of homelessness. And so we'll be doing some targeted outreach as a part of this to include those voices and center them as a part of this process. All right, and on our next slide, you can see an overview of the timeline for this work. Currently, we've been engaging in our gaps analysis, which is an environmental scan of a lot of the information and work that Anna was highlighting about the community's response to homelessness to date. We'll be engaging in outreach activities to different key stakeholders throughout the process. And as we get later into our process, we'll be doing synthesis and developing recommendations in partnership with our strategic planning committee, developing draft strategies, and ultimately bringing the final plan for adoption later in the summer. But this will not be your only opportunity to weigh in about the goals and strategies. We'll certainly have a number of opportunities throughout. So go ahead and advance to our next slide, please. So just in terms of the goals for today's kickoff, again, it's to introduce the strategic planning process and to brainstorm some of those needs and obstacles and strengths, to flag best practices for addressing homelessness, to identify necessary stakeholders and leadership to move the work forward, and to discuss community coordination, education, and engagement. Okay. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Aram, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the known community needs.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to flag that I've got some questions from some folks, and so while I'm just going to read them out loud, and then maybe Anna or someone can text me back or chat me back, and I can share the answers. But folks were wondering if there were veteran-specific programs around homelessness, and if all the money that was spent, all the state funding was spent, the $750,000. So those are two of the questions coming in. And folks asked if we could share the slides, and we should be able to share a PDF or something version. So just wanted to do that housekeeping right now. So I want to talk a little bit about where we've kind of started in terms of what we were looking at as someone who's coming into your community and trying to support what is already been there. So Homebase works a lot in the Bay Area, but it's been nice to dig in more to what's going on in the city of Alameda, because there's like a lot of unique pieces to the city. But as many of you know, there was an Everyone Home plan to end homelessness. So this is a county level strategic plan on homelessness, and there was a 2018 update. So this is one of the places that we are looking to ensure we are aligned with, because I think it's important that we're kind of all working towards the same thing. The City of Alameda homelessness report. So there was a report presented to City Council, and there were things specific to the city as well that we were looking at, and I'll kind of speak in a moment to some of the things we've seen. Plus, we're looking at system models, staff reports from public meetings, needs assessments, auditor reports, PIT data. So trying to really get the whole scale, plus talk to all of you and more. So that will help inform the strategy going forward for the next several years, hopefully. So some of the things that came out of this and is the causes of the housing crisis. Some of the things that came out of that Everyone Home plan and the City of Alameda's report to help paint the picture of what kind of may have led us to the moment we're at now. And I want to flag, if you see there's red text on the bottom, and my name is Aram Housley, and I'm labeled as the host. And if you think there's something missing from this list, I invite you to direct chat to me as the host. And we want to be able to keep track if we're missing something that you all think has been essential. One thing that we're seeing is the redevelopment efforts that contribute to this. I think it was mentioned before, just Gene Sweeney Park, a shortage of rental housing, a high cost of development, and then increasing demands for rentals while people have a lack of income compared to the cost of those rentals. There's some exclusionary zoning potentially at play if folks are not allowed to build more than single family homes. And then there are stigmas against those with mental health issues. So I'm seeing in the chat shortage of affordable housing. Someone is asking to address what affordable means, and I think that's actually a really interesting point. I think we will be looking to that. Does that mean low income, extremely low income, very low income? People mentioned a lack of low barrier shelters, folks struggling with drug addiction, things like that. And I wanted to flag an answer earlier. Operation Dignity is the veteran program, is a veteran program working for folks. So these are some of the causes of homelessness. So feel free to keep sharing in the comments. And I know there's a lot of kind of follow-up questions, and in future sessions we'll try and get to it, but really trying to just kind of lay some groundwork. And then some of these things you will have an opportunity to kind of speak to what you think is working and not. So things that you're sharing, bring up in your groups, because we are going to break out into small groups. So the other thing, identified needs, and some folks are kind of nailing some of them, but one of the things that potentially is unique to the city of Alameda is that maybe you don't quite have as many unsheltered folks as other parts of the Bay, but you have people teetering on the edge. And so we'll talk a little bit about prevention and diversion. So that's people going into the system. Need to increase coordination and community education. We're going to have a breakout related to that. As we are dealing with people that have complex problems, looking at intensive case management services. A big thing that has come out of a lot of the different reporting and speaking, and this is basically everywhere I've ever worked, and that's all over California and beyond, but is treating unhoused residents with dignity. That's actually the thing I most often hear, is a lack of dignity in talking to folks. And then a real dedication to mental wellness, and I think there's some efforts to that. Increased access to emergency shelters, obviously investing in permanent housing, and inclusion of those with lived experience is another big thing, making sure people have a voice. Somebody discussed Dedicating to senior housing could be useful to prevent their lack of funding, maybe for room key to home key, services for keeping people stable, emergency housing for folks in tent dwellers. So a bunch of other identified needs that people are raising in the chat as well. So again, you can keep sending those in. Response for folks who are unhoused living in parks, I'm seeing come in too. Great. The other couple things I just want to point out are a little bit about what's called the HIC, which is the housing inventory count, and the PIT, which is the point in time count. If you work in homelessness, you are probably familiar with these concepts, but as you also may know, these things target a county level or a COC continuum of care level. So one of the things Homebase will be doing is working with the city of Alameda to dive into data that is specific to the city. As this is a kickoff, we're still very much kind of investigating, exploring, interviewing, all of that stuff. So we don't have all the answers today, but I did want to share, this is what the housing inventory, so this is the beds that exist in emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. So safe havens don't really exist anymore as new programs, but there's some legacy ones. Those are basically supportive housing for folks who have been chronic homeless and on the street a lot. Emergency shelter, I think folks mainly know, but generally temporary. Lodging, sometimes congregate, less so in the days of COVID, obviously, so that may change an approach. Transitional housing is 24 months of on-site, really intense services. Rapid rehousing is generally rental subsidies up to 24 months with case management, and permanent supportive housing is as the name speaks, and it's permanent supportive housing, so people can live there in theory forever, but there are moving on programs usually that go along with it in order to support people then to move out of this system. So it's kind of, everyone's kind of got to keep moving through to open up space. So so we will be looking more into it, but I wanted to give folks an idea of that. Someone's asking me, is this stuff being listed, the ones in the city of Alameda? This currently is for the county, but we're going to dig in. We're going to find, you're able to identify the inventory within each city. We're just waiting on data requests. So we can certainly report out that piece. But if folks have ideas, we will have a section on talking about temporary shelter in our breakouts. The other thing I wanted to show was point in time count. So this is also point in time counts. The city of Alameda started participating a few years back. So this is a helpful way to get a measure of what's going on. Again, it's largely done at a county level, but you can see on this page, the top left, it shows Alameda's a number. So if it's small at all for folks, the number in black is the number of folks who were sheltered on the point in time count, and the blue is the number of folks who were unsheltered. So if they were sheltered, that's like folks who would be in beds that within that housing inventory account. So as you'll see, oh, I'll back up because I'm getting a couple questions about kind of timing and what this is. So the HUD requires programs to communities, COCs as they're called, continuums of care, to conduct a point in time count. Technically every year, but every other year, it's a unsheltered count. Due to COVID, we're seeing a lot of folks postponing, so we'll probably see a count the year later. But that's a great question. But this is one night in January. It is not precise, it's not perfect, but it is a way that the federal government asks us to count folks. So if you see this piece, you'll see Alameda represents 6% of the total sheltered number. The total is at the bottom right if you're looking. 2% of the county is unsheltered, and nearly 3% of total homelessness. So, I mean, as you can see to some of these other communities, I've heard what is described as, I think, like a manageable issue or a tangible number of people that really could be supported if you look at these numbers, right? So you really could get in there and start identifying all of these individuals and supporting them in their housing efforts. I'm just going to check. HUD has canceled. So I'm just getting notices. So the count's going to be canceled for this year and postponed until COVID improves. This is not unusual. A lot of major cities and major communities are also postponing, and it's basically for the safety of this is done by volunteers generally. So volunteers and city staff, so they would be going out there. Folks are also asking about some of the other cities, wanting to know about their sheltered and unsheltered stuff. So I probably can't address that today, but we're gonna kind of, again, keep a log of all of these pieces. So thank you for your questions. We are gonna give you a chance to speak to each other now and kind of share out. So these are gonna be the 3 breakouts that we're going to do. We're going to give people about 15 minutes or so, and probably groups of around 5 to 7. What I want to really emphasize here is that this is, I debated calling this a discussion breakout or a brainstorm breakout. It's really a brainstorm. There's just not enough time. So what we're going to ask folks to do is not spend a lot of time debating. And I wish if we were in person, I'd really encourage a lot of meeting and greeting. But even, if you're speaking, you can do a quick intro of maybe who you represent, but it's not necessarily kind of a meet and greet either. But I think the idea is when we get in here is to look at these different topics and find out ultimately, what do you all think is working, what's not working, and really just start generating some content so that we know where to head and start digging into what your community thinks about. So really this is going to be about getting down as many ideas as you have. We will be flagging a survey that we will share a link to. And the survey right now, I'll just be blunt, is in English, but within days it will be in several other language. And we will provide links to a website and make sure that we leave it open for a couple weeks so that folks can get in there. So the 3 breakouts are going to be on prevention and diversion. I'll kind of speak to what that is exactly in a second. The second one are temporary and permanent housing, and the last one being coordination and community engagement. You can tell already, 15 minutes, 5 people, these topics. I'm going to suggest as we go into each potentially that where you might spend your focus or how you might make some decisions in your groups. But get to that in a second. So general instructions. Sorry, there's so much text here, but want to get it all here. So if everyone can really kind of take a look at this slide, we are going to put everyone in groups, in random groups. Folks needing American Sign Language interpretation, we will make sure you get into a group with someone who can do that interpretation. But please you can message me at the host or Miguel as a co-host, and we will make sure that we move you around. The key to this is that these are going to be largely unfacilitated. They're not going to be facilitated by us. There's a lot of folks who want you all to sort of take a role and help us figure this out. We will have a couple of us kind of join and kind of listen in, but really we want you immediately to identify someone to be a facilitator to help move you through, to kind of help keep time. We are going to ask you all, someone to be a note taker. So take down your notes, and we want you to paste it into the chat. You're going to paste it into the host so that we can preserve all of this. And then for those groups who want to speak out in between each breakout, identify a spokesperson, and we'll let folks have a chance to share there, and we'll ask you to raise your hand and come off mute. But as soon as you get in, we'll have folks assign these things, and then facilitators should kind of move you through, and note takers should be ready. Deborah's putting in the chat just those guidance about what to do. So let me just check if there's any other questions. I think the couple of questions I'm seeing are probably just too long to get into now, but we're going to preserve all this and go through it afterwards, and we'll find the best way that we can address some of these things. So, okay. So for the first breakout that we're going to do is going to be about prevention and diversion. So all your groups are going to be discussing this issue, and I just want to define them. Prevention, because sometimes it gets confusing. Prevention is really targeted people who are at imminent risk of homelessness. So generally, they are currently housed, but it's those people that are on the edge, right? And so things could include eviction prevention, legal aid, something called shallow subsidies, which is kind of basically short term, and then can be added on as needed. Help with utility assistance. And emergency solutions grant program is a federal program that supports some of these strategies so that folks can get an idea. This is your legal assistance, eviction prevention. You know, we're going to be talking about what's needed there, what works. And then this will be pasted in the chat as shortly as well. These the questions that I want you to answer. So diversion, on the other hand, is a strategy. Diversion is about having people avoid shelter. So there's a difference. Prevention is avoiding homelessness. Diversion is avoiding shelter. So sometimes it's, hey, is there anybody you could stay with? And we could just give you something. Is there a motel hotel voucher? There's something called problem solving that folks sometimes also call diversion. So it's flexible funds that would allow people to stay in housing. Maybe your aunt will let you stay there if you pay for groceries for the week. So these are the types of things that we'll be looking at in this space. So Deborah has put in the chat, this is what we want you to spend your 15 minutes on. What is needed and what's working. And then there's a couple prompts for kind of how to think about that. And these are very general, but the idea is, what do you all think is working? What's not? There's not a place to debate kind of strategies. Just get them all out there so that we know kind of what the gamut is or what people are thinking. So I'm going to wait a second so that we can start organizing breakouts here, and we're going to put you into those in a minute. But if anybody has any questions, please let me know. And I'll just give a second for folks to write in the chat to me, the host, Aram Houslave, if you have any questions.
Yeah, and everyone will get be automatically placed into a breakout room in just one moment. I just want to flag that once you enter that breakout room, please do feel free to start your video and unmute yourself so that you can participate fully in the conversation. So take a look at that when you get into your breakout group. And if you are in a room that doesn't have anybody or you're having technical difficulties, anything like that, feel free to come back to the main room at any time and we'll reassign you promptly. Thank you.
Getting a couple questions about folks wanting to opt out. Certainly this is up to you, but the rest of the whole event is breakouts. It's breakouts and report outs. So if folks do not want to be a participant in those, totally, you all can make your own choices on that. But just so you're clear, this will be most of the remainder because this was us giving you some info and now we want to get info from you. The very end, we'll go over next steps. And there's a website and notification emails and things like that we want to make sure people are aware of. So with that said,
yeah,
Amanda,
and with that
else?
feedback, I just changed it so you'll get an invite to join a breakout room instead of being automatically placed so that folks can more easily opt out if they'd like to. But you should be getting those invitations now.
Folks who are still in the room, you probably got a pop-up. If you were interested in going to it, it should be a little blue button you can click to join in the room. Otherwise, you may be sitting in silence with us. But please feel free to join in or chat if you're having struggles. Man, it looks like the room Josh was in, everyone left. They didn't think there was guidance to what to do. Maybe move him. Josh, if you're interested.
I am, but I have to leave soon anyway.
Oh, got it.
But everybody
Do
just
you want
kind
to
of
be moved in temporarily or sorry about
No,
that?
I'm gonna have to leave in 5 minutes anyway. But
Okay.
I would
Type
like
in the
to
chat
work
if you
on
have any
this
other
more.
questions.
I
Sure.
just found out about this meeting last night, so
Let me I don't know that did you catch our email?
just the email you sent me accepting the meeting.
I'm gonna
Or-
send you our home base email, but also let me see if I can grab it. If I find it, I'm also gonna send you the link to sign up for notifications.
Yeah, that's
I think that would be most useful. But thank you for joining. Okay, so I
yeah.
sent
I
you
just
now
love to
our
get some
email.
definition around what you're actually trying to do, and be able to do some reading on that before I can speak to anything or give any feedback at all. I just don't know what your overall objectives are and how you're measuring things.
Sure, happy to chat more. So feel free to shoot that email. But essentially, it's a 5-year plan to help the city set priorities and goals to address the homelessness issue in the city of Alameda. So right now, everything is kind of out there, and we're just kind of looking for what might be the best ways for the city of Alameda, rather than maybe a county or another entity to do this kind of work. So, but happy to check in through email and kind of give you a more of a sense. There is going to be a website. If you sign up for notifications, there should be updates going on there. This is really just a kickoff to have people start thinking about what they think is working and not. In terms of measurables and all that, we'll be looking at a lot of the work the county has been doing around system modeling and figuring out what have been the most effective interventions here. So we'll be looking into that data as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I just signed
problem.
up for it, so
Perfect.
I hope to meet you again. Take care.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye.
Hi, Aram.
Hello.
Hi. So I don't know that we as citizens of Alameda are educated enough and have the credentials to address the questions you're asking us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in itself.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco has been dealing with this situation for years. We lived in San Francisco for many years, moved from there, obviously. Oakland has from that count through over 3,000 unsheltered people. I mean, I think there are obviously other cities that have been doing this and know how to do this and what needs to be done. So why can't we just follow what they do? Like I saw Dublin had 0 and Piedmont had 0. So what are those two cities doing to have 0? And let's just do what they do.
I don't disagree. I think what we hope to do is to take what folks think is the problems and what's working in strengths, and then align them with the best practices nationally and what those communities have been doing locally. So this really, again, is a kickoff, and I really respect your point of that maybe there's not enough information here, but we know there's providers in the room too, nonprofits, city staff. We wanted to start to provide the conversation, but more will be coming out, and then we hopefully will be able to share more with the community about strategies. But yes, we are not going to start from scratch. We are absolutely going to be looking at what neighbors have done and what we think has been the most effective here and elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want to join a room, Cheryl, or?
No, I think I'm just going to hang up at this point because I don't have anything to add. I'm not intelligent enough or, in this topic to speak to what causes homelessness. All I can share is what I see when we come through the Posey tube and the Webster tube and the tents and the trash everywhere and the homeless people banging on the doors of the nearby subdivisions. That's, I mean, I'm just seeing the effects of it, the impacts of it on our community. I don't know, besides, the mental illness piece, I don't really know what else. I'm not a homeless
Sure.
guru like you guys are.
Sure. No, and as you can imagine, it's everything. Unfortunately, the homeless system is it's supposed to answer the fact that we don't have childcare or healthcare or all of those things. So we end up dealing with all the problems as they kind of culminate. But I just messaged you in the chat a survey, which I do think you're in a position to respond to. So I would do that. And then if you want to sign up for notifications about other things, I'm sending you that as well, so that you can stay in the loop. But I really appreciate your point. And part of this is, and if you do want to stay, and maybe I should have made it the first breakout, but it is community engagement and education, and it is about what do you all need to know or understand. So, but absolutely respect if you want to jump off.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Take care. All right, everyone. Thank you for breaking out in those groups. Admittedly, I got a couple comments. Some folks felt like they still don't have enough information to answer some of these questions. That's totally fair. The third breakout actually deals with kind of community engagement and coordination and what would be helpful for you all as residents to be learning. And again, this is kind of a kickoff to kind of see what the folks in the room think is important. So I'm going to ask a couple things. I'm also being told I forgot video. So thank you. So a couple things I want to ask. One, as just a quick check-in for folks, you can use the chat again to host. And if that was brutal, text me a 0. If that was helpful or useful, send me a 10. And I just want to just check in if anybody wants to let me know kind of how that was going. The other piece I'm going to ask folks to do is to text me as the host again, Aram Housley. If you were the note taker, could you share into the chat to me whatever notes you have? That would be super helpful for us to collect. And from what I'm getting from some folks, kind of fell in the middle, around 5s and 6s, some 0s. So that's helpful also for us to just think about as we go forward and look at other engagements. So I'd like to then also invite any of the folks who were spokespeople to raise their hand in the participant chat. Actually, at this point, you probably could also come off mute. So raise your hand if you want to share out anything from your group, and we'll just spend a few minutes if folks want to hear from others. And then I can share what I'm seeing as well if we don't get any speakers. So does anybody want to choose to share out for their group some thoughts, questions? Great. Charlotte.
I think our group was most concerned with our lack of awareness of what is currently available. And so we didn't really feel like we could make judgments on what's working and not working. And so the bottom line being that having community information and access to knowing what's going on is really going to be a huge part of making this work, is getting the whole community involved and educated. And then senior housing, we need senior housing to keep people off the street, was kind of an obvious diversion concept and prevention.
I really appreciate you sharing, and it is good to know where you folks feel like need a little bit more information, but the senior comment's great. Appreciate you sharing. Anybody else want to share? I know some folks said they were confused about what they're tasked with doing. If you can see my screen, that's what you're tasked for doing. And these questions will be the same for the next group. And then the last group will be different, but your group is just deciding as a whole, going around what's needed, what's working. If you're struggling with the specifics for what's needed, who do you think needs it? Or what do you think are the reasons that things aren't happening? And then if you do know of any good programs, or you see of any outreach that's working, that's kind of the idea here. So I'm just going to look for any other hands raised. Folks, again, I want to invite, I see a few people have pasted into the chat, but folks want to learn how rental assistance work and subsidies, if they're doing enough to keep folks in housing. Not a lot of information for renters in Alameda. Curious about what we're doing now to keep people from needing to access shelters. Suggest day-centered, safe parking, overnight parking, more outreach, homelessness court, so people can resolve tickets, other prevention things, looking into what's left over in HEAP. Safe parking has been a lifesaver, seeing more on that. talking about other federal sources. That's good. Some folks speaking to CDGB. These are block grants. So these are grants that the federal government gives to communities based on kind of population and census stuff. The Dine and Connect stuff seems to be a great program. Meals coming from Food Bank. And let me just see what else we got here. Just want to give folks a little taste of what's going on. Looking at housing navigation, navigators at the city, and more outreach. So for as much as folks didn't think they knew what they're talking about, definitely many of you are kind of clued in. So really appreciate that. Some discussion around rent prices and freezing them, who's long-term versus who needs and who has mental health and drug issues. So just increased coordination there. And then some other comments I'm seeing are just, there's still a little confusion about number of people in rooms, and if people don't know how to raise their hands. If you don't know how to raise your hand, you should be able to do it from the participant list or from the dots that are on your picture if you're on video, I'm pretty sure, to do that piece. And then we will double check if there's not enough people in the room, but we'll try and mix it up. So that's that. Let me know if there's any other comments, and please, if you had notes and you didn't put them in, please put them in there. Great. So with that, I'm going to move us along here. And this is the second to last of the two groups I'd like to do. So this breakout, as you can see, has a lot. And so that's why maybe this will give people a little bit more of an idea what they might talk about in this one. So this is a big topic, temporary and permanent housing. If we were doing an all-day event in the non-COVID world, we'd have broken out even more. So we'll look, that's why really we'll plug our survey and some other things that people can make sure they get input. So you could do one of two things. I suggest your group kind of maybe quickly decide whether you want to focus on temporary or permanent, or if there's something on this list that you feel like you'd really be inclined to talk about. I will spend 1 minute just kind of running down some of these things, but emergency shelter kind of already talked about before. Navigation centers is kind of a riff on emergency shelters, but the idea is they're very low barrier, let people bring in pets and their possessions and basically all the things that you would want to bring into a place. Otherwise, you may not go into shelters. So transitional housing, talked about a little before, community cabins and tiny homes. I think folks have probably seen that around the way in terms of things that are getting launched in different places. And I know folks have different feelings on those things. Domestic violence as a specific call out. Usually they have private shelters if they are specific to that. SLEs or sober living environments. As some of you can guess, those would be without alcohol or drugs. Safe parking, we've heard. So that's basically a lot of times people, before they become truly homeless, they end up in their car. And so this allows them a place to park that's safe and not out kind of in the open. And then sanctioning campsites is another idea of whether or not if there's no place for folks to go, then is it an idea to allow them to stay there, with certainly considering public health and all that. And then in terms of permanent supportive housing, I mentioned before, but it's long-term and with supportive services attached to it. Folks might have heard of Public Housing Authority or Section 8. Public housing is basically folks pay 30%. And there is a City of Alameda Public Housing Authority in the city. Some communities have more than one, some have one. Section 8 is a similar thing, and it's basically for low-income folks, and they can get vouchers that they can go use in the market rate. Rapid rehousing is kind of similar to that. Rapid rehousing, you get to do up to 24 months of rental subsidies, and there are varying versions, but that's the federal model, and that has monthly case management. And the idea is that if people got a couple of years of help, then they could get back on their feet. Rental assistance programs and leasing programs are just different eligible costs in these programs. They're kind of specific terms of art, but more or less they involve subsidizing a unit so that someone who is low income can afford it. And similarly, affordable low income housing would really be kind of outside potentially of the nonprofit world, but it would be part of a development. Maybe there's carve outs for a certain amount of folks. And I think people were talking about, well, what does affordable even mean? And I think that's a good question. Market rate rentals, you'll see this kind of term, or you might see it on the survey. When we say that, just means kind of run of mill, you want to go rent an apartment, go on Craigslist, whatever, that's what we're talking about there. So people can usually use rapid rehousing and Section 8 in those things, but sometimes that takes kind of landlord engagement and other things. And finally, for those who are able to move along to home ownership. So we're going to do a similar activity. Please raise your hand now if you know how to, or put in the chat to me if you're unclear about what we're going to do in the groups. But we're going to do a similar exercise, put folks back in a group, thinking of those lists. Think about what you think might be needed for whom. We've already heard, right, seniors in some preventative way, and we've heard maybe some sort of long-term housing. Other things you see working that could be replicated. And again, if you don't know, I think it's also useful to identify the questions that you would want to need answers to in order to answer these questions. So Deborah's putting in the chat again, so you can look at some instructions there, but same deal when we put folks into groups. But I'll leave 1 minute just to see if anybody has any technical issues or questions, but really invite everyone to participate in them.
Okay, I'm going to leave the meeting.
Okay, take care. And folks, at the end, we're going to plug all our links, so hopefully you can stay. We're going to do this one more session, and then we'll wrap up, and we'll give you an opportunity to look at for notifications and see the website. Seeing no more questions or hand raised, Amanda, are we ready to break out, folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone should start to receive an invite to join a breakout group. And same thing, if you find yourself in a room that doesn't have anybody or any other issues, feel free to come back to the main room and we'll get you sorted out.
Thanks all.
Hi, I just wanted to say I saw your message to I'm not sure which of our interpreters put the question in the chat, but yeah, I don't see Judith on as a participant anymore. I didn't receive any messages about leaving, so I'm not sure.
I saw someone named, or I think it was Jeannie who announced she was going to leave, but wow, room 3 has got a lot. I'm trying to see.
Yeah, this is Lori. Judith told me that she had to go. So I'm not sure what the reason was, but she did leave the meeting. And so now at this point, if you want us to stay and interpret the rest of the meeting when everything is back in public session, just in case someone else that we don't know of is using services. We're happy to do that.
That might be worthwhile because we're also recording this session and could, we can have that spotlight be a part of the recording for
Perfect.
later viewers.
Perfect. Okay,
Great.
happy to do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. In case she's able to watch later.
Amanda, Sue Lafferty was asking if they're in rooms yet.
Yes, everyone should have gotten an invitation pop up. Sue, do you want me to try to send you an invite again?
Yeah, Sue. Usually, Sue, there's a blue button that comes up and it says you should be in room 2.
So I just moved you to a different room to see if the invitation would pop up again for you.
There we
Great,
go.
she's in.
Cool, thank you.
All right, see you back there.
All right, thank you everyone for coming back. Let me just see, I saw a raised hand. Marilyn, do you have a question? Did you want to unmute? Meanwhile, can others paste in the
It was
chat?
just about when we were going to comment.
Okay, stay on deck. Perfect. So we'll get back to Marilyn in a second. So as some folks are already starting to do, please, if you were the note taker, paste into the chat. It's super helpful for us to keep track, especially if not everyone reports out. But I invite anyone right now. Actually, let's start with Marilyn if you want to report out first.
Sure. We had a lot of problem with any of the parts of the questions because there isn't any coordination or communication, understanding of the programs that we have. You know, that the community at large is totally not familiar with anything. And in our group, we had two people talking about rent help programs, and they were talking about two different ones, and we didn't know how they overlapped or intersected. So, you know, before we can do much of anything, you know, if there was some committee that understood the workings of each group and could refer people to different groups according to what the needs are, that would be tremendously helpful.
Thank you, Marilyn. A big takeaway, just so I make sure I know, some of this seems like it's about community education and ensuring that you all understand kind of the process, where the front door is, what some of the specifics to the programs are, kind of who they target, those kinds of things, to have you be able to make better informed comments on what's going on.
Correct.
Is that fair? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so I really do want to quickly acknowledge the point you're making that we're hearing. We got a lot of City of Alameda residents here, which is awesome. I think I'm seeing like less potentially of like nonprofit folks or other folks that have run. So some of the groups have a mix of that more than others. And so it's something we're going to keep in mind as we keep looking at this process and the best way to engage. What we're always balancing is how much information to give versus giving people an opportunity to speak. And so we tried to balance that today, but clearly I think, and that's what the next breakout will speak to, is what do you all think is important in terms of coordination and community education, or, you know, more, I think, going down the path of what you were just speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else who wanted to share out? I'll look for raised hands. Bruce?
Yeah, I just, our group, our last breakout group, I think it was is pretty much what you just spoke of, is a lot of us need, like the homeless need as much single source, whatever their issue is, whatever they need the most help, whether it be housing, whether it be a mental health issue, whether it be a drug issue, one place, hopefully, that they can go to and not get directed to some other place, but say, you know, these people will help you. We can get you in touch with them right now. More single source places that they can go to get services, or if they're out and can't get in, somebody to outreach to them. And then for those of us who would like to be of more assistance, what's a single point of contact that can give us information about where we can help people go for services and address what their needs are along those lines. That's what I understood from my group.
I love it. That's super helpful, because I think as folks who are residents, they want to know where they can send anybody, but even the folks accessing the services, they may very well have the same challenges you just spoke of, is knowing kind of the right points of access. So really appreciate those comments. Charlotte, would you like to share?
Yes. We were, we had a kind of a split count on whether we wanted to concentrate on permanent or temporary, because both are so important. In the temporary aspect, I think we felt the most important thing is that there really is no place for males currently, other than short-term hotel stays, or encouraging them to try to find somebody that likes them enough to sleep on their couch. So that seems extremely critical. One of the questions being, we have how many unused barracks out on the base that might be a relatively inexpensive way of putting people into something, at least temporarily. The more permanent concept is, as Grover and our group brought up, BACS, which buys homes, and then the individuals each have a bedroom in that home, so they have more of a normal social life, and not in a place that necessarily screams, I was homeless and now I'm getting help. So looking at those types of programs and funding them were probably our biggest concerns and issues.
I really appreciate all of that, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Several things that we want to keep looking into, and some of the available spaces that you've spoke of. What are the kind of impediments to getting folks in? And then you highlighted something, maybe without knowing it, but shared housing as a concept works well with certain populations, and to your point, gets folks kind of build their own community, have their own room. So they're definitely models where that can be super successful. Lois, do you want to share? Thank you, Charlotte. Lois, do you want to share?
You're welcome.
Sure. So our group, we had some people speaking and some not. More funding, a less conservative approach on the Boise decision, which is a decision that says that people, if you can't find a place for them to live, then you can't necessarily kick them off of public property. So a less conservative approach on that decision. And then again, we heard the fact that good information is needed, that a lot of people don't know about the programs and where to find the data. And then understanding of the scale of the issue, what folks need housing and what type of housing they need. And I'm trying to read my notes here. Need to know what's going on. That's again, information. And then where to plug in to volunteer. That was something that came up. And then what's good, Dine and Connect, and the work that the faith organization's doing, and the day center. It's a great place. That's what I have.
Awesome, and really love hearing about the places people know of that are doing well, because we always want to look if these are models to expand or replicate. So really appreciate those comments, Lois. Thanks. Doug, you want to chime in?
Sure, I was the note taker, but I'll step in and present also. So our energy was really around transitional or temporary housing. Under what is needed, we talked about increasing the number of mobile homes that the the city has access to, and looking at Tough Sheds Community Cabin as another way of housing folks, and for whom really targeted at those that are unsheltered now with the cold and the rain, really wanting to get people that are out on the street now into something as quickly as possible. Not really a barrier, but a kind of a question is, you know, transitional housing is kind of a step up housing for people start at one level and you want to move them into something more permanent. And the question was about what is the infrastructure and the progression for people moving through that into something more permanent. Under what's working, again, as others have said, Dine and Connect, the Village of Love, the Day Center were really called out as successes. Progress Foundation, an organization in San Francisco that's doing kind of graduated housing with services, was also noted as a success. And then I'll put in a plug for the city's homeless hotline, 510-522-4663, which is a central number people can call if they see someone who's homeless or have a question about homelessness and want to get some assistance.
Doug, it was 510-522-4663.
Right. Or 522 home.
Great. Very good. Lots of good stuff in there as well. I'm gonna flag a few other things I saw, and then we'll move along because we're a little bit behind. So, but I want to save some space for the last one, which will be about what folks kind of want to learn more about. But I saw other comments about if we have all these empty buildings in Alameda Point, more affordable to retrofit than to buy new trailers or community cabins. Need male housing. I think we heard that. Transitional housing, the community cabins, not tiny homes where 1 to 2 folks can stay, but concerns about those places being isolated, and really to avoid isolating people even further. Not just housing, right? Essential services are necessary to stay, and really just trying to explore looking at ways to get people involved in securing their own food or gardening, growing, hiring folks who have lived experience to help do different jobs of outreach, security, other things like that that might be helpful. Holistic approach as well, coordination being flagged. So lots of really good stuff, and lots of things that speak to wanting to know more how to access, wanting to know more about how to coordinate. And Deborah dropped in the numbers to the chat to speak to where they can get connected. Doug, somebody's asking me if you call that number, who are you calling exactly? So I'm curious if you want to write to me or share, but and even more. So lots of good stuff in here. And some people are messaging me, admittedly frustrated, even with this process. So all fair points. I want to move us to the last piece, and part of me thinks maybe I should have started here, but live and learn. So I want to have folks think about this in for like the next 10 minutes, coordination and community engagement. So if there are businesses or residents that would support mentorship or apprentices or internships or support scholarships, it could be a way for business community and residents to engage. I heard a lot today about community education, not just on best practices, but even just what are the services, what are the different components, how are they defined, who do they serve, how successful are they, how can we measure these things? All really good points. If you're going to do rental subsidies and support people with rent, it's a real key to do landlord engagement, incentivization. So these are all some things that we'd like you to discuss around, and actually I'll put the questions up in a second. And then the other considerations are, you have the city operating within itself, right? So inter-city department coordination, you have the city with all the other cities, city and the county, you have city and the continuum of care, which is a body that gets money from the federal government on behalf of the community, city and coordinated entry, which is a system that the federal government requires as kind of a front door if you're receiving federal funds. So many of you may want to talk about the second bullet here. So go with that if that's where you want to go. But the other piece, if you're a little bit more in the know, potentially you might be able to address what have been some of the challenges in coordinating services, coordinating funding. Who's not at the table? Maybe it's you all. So it's just us figuring and having you guys explore that. So I'll pause for a moment. I know some people are tapping out and appreciate you being here. And Doug let me know the answer to that question was it goes to a designated line at 211, and then the operators know who to send people to. So that's not uncommon. 211 is kind of a quick resource. It doesn't mean these people know everything, but they kind of know the criteria of the programs that they can send folks to. So maybe this is an area where maybe this could be beefed up or something. So these are kind of the things that we could be thinking about. Raise your hand or anything if you have any questions. Otherwise, we're going to end at 8:30ish. So it's 8:08 now. So give you about 10 minutes and we'll see if there's any time to report out, but we're going to make sure to flag how you can get follow-up notifications, how you can see the website. And we want everyone, it's about a 15 or so minute survey. And if you need it in different languages, that information will be out soon, but we're going to plug that as well. So just looking for a lot of ways to collect information. Amanda, we ready to send folks?
Yep, we're going to go ahead and open the rooms now. Again, if you're having any trouble connecting or if you're in a room without enough people, just let us know and we'll reassign you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for breaking out. Hopefully, as we've done before, if you were a note taker, you can help share comments in the chat. Super helpful for us. And if you have other thoughts, certainly feel free to share in the chat to me, the host, Aram Housley. Once again, we're going to spend a few minutes if anyone wants to report out from their group, any key takeaways you want us to be paying attention to. So I'll look for raised hands, but please keep posting in the chat. And wrapping up soon, folks. Thanks for bearing with. We're going to report out here and just give you some next steps. I'll just look for hands. Thanks,
I'm
Doug. You
sorry,
want to
I'm
share?
not finding a hand.
Sure, I could go. So, you know, there's a lot of energy around homelessness. There's a lot of frustration around what's currently going on out there and the perception that you know, none of these programs are working. We're not solving homelessness. And so a lot of our discussion was really around that energy. And there was a sense, and this was really around more community engagement, what the community needs to know, and also what the community needs to tell us. And one, there's a sense that there's either misunderstanding around the Boise case that needs to be clarified, or a little larger than that, just to understand what laws are in place, what the impact of different court findings are, to be really clear and consistent with the community. This is how we have to operate based on the laws. We need a central coordinating body. Who's leading this effort? It seems like everybody's doing their own thing. This is what it feels like. And then how are they coordinating and spending our money? Because most of this is taxpayer money. And then the other question that was raised are, what are the alternatives? If something isn't working, what can the community do to identify or ask for alternatives? There needs to be a structure of accountability to let the community know, you know, simple things like how much money is being spent and what's been accomplished with that money. We needed to develop kind of like a report card to report out to the community of how this is going, and that needs to be built into the strategic planning. I think I captured most of it there.
Thanks so much, Doug. Doris, I'll get you in one sec. Real quick, I totally understand, and some of it is just, you know, if folks don't know, you know, kind of what's going on, what the money is being spent on, what's successful, folks may have a lot of feelings about this isn't working. We still see people out there. We still see people struggling. Someone had stayed behind and didn't go to a breakout and ended up chatting with them quickly just about how the homeless system ends up being responsible for every other failure in our society. You know, so I get it that people are frustrated and there's a lot of money being spent, but it's basically trying to undo whatever harm has been done by lack of education, preschool, healthcare, criminal justice, all those things. So we are indeed in the very challenging position of trying to solve all those problems when really can't be done alone. But I appreciate the comments about coordination and just in general the community engagement piece, and I accept that folks are frustrated. I think everyone in this room is frustrated, and we want to pursue the best options here. Really quick on Boise, it really just means if you don't have a place to send people, you can't arrest them or lock them up or kick them out. You have to have space, and it can't be with tons of rules. They can't be required to go to church or whatever the other things are. That's ultimately what it means. And to me, it makes sense. You can't tell people to move off the sidewalk if you don't have a warm place to put them. But more discussion on that. I spoke too much, so I will go to Doris.
Hi, my name is Doris. I'm with Building Futures for Women and Children. Sorry I got in here late because I was doing a bunch of other things. However, I was in a group with Miss Lois and with Beth, and it's pretty much what we see, and just doing this for a while. I've been a program coordinator for their Alameda Housing Resource Center. the one thing that we see is there's a lack of cohesiveness. Like Doug just mentioned a moment ago, we have quite a few programs that's out there and everyone is doing their own part, but no one else is knowing what everyone else is doing. So it's kind of like we are probably doing exactly the same thing, repeating the same methods, or probably working with some of the same people. Even with coordinated entry, what I learned with coordinated entry and what I shared is what it did is it kind of tied all the different organizations together, trying to make things a little bit more cohesive to where it was a database. The one thing that it'd be nice to see here in Alameda is something to where it can streamline all the different services and connect the service providers with the other different agencies. Like I work with the Village of Love, I work with Dine and Connect, but Beth mentioned a really new program, and I've been doing this for about 25 years, a thing called Launchpad. And Beth, please let me know if I said that correctly, but it's something for youth transitioning out of the foster care who eventually became homeless, but to avoid, they are sponsored by someone to bring them in their home to where they receive funds to help that person. That's a really great resource. That's something that we could utilize. So just something more cohesive, where a place where we all can learn of each other's programs. So if we won't be duplicating the same services, and then we can actually find out what services are not being tapped into. And that's
Really
all
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you, Doris. So many
Oh.
good things there, but I think a lot of, yeah, go ahead.
Just really one shout out to Miss Anna Bagdis, because she holds a lot of this together and trying to do all of this, but she's only one individual, and that's one thing that we also was brought up by Lois. It's so many resources, but one person alone can't do it. There needs to be like little subcommittees just for the city of Alameda resources. So that way it's not just all on one individual, because it's a lot. I'm finished.
Well put, though. I think a lot of that, what I'm hearing too, is like, let's not be duplicating services. There's people in the room concerned about, how we're spending money, what we're doing. So I think that coordinated piece, that coordinated entry, and it sounds like maybe even creating a bigger space for providers to be meeting on an ongoing basis for the city of Alameda, so that there's real connection and coordination there. We have 2 minutes left in the scheduled time that we were going to do. So drop anything else in the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to close us out, but just from my point of view, I really appreciate it. I know this is contentious. I know it's hard. We don't have all the answers, and people are mad and frustrated. And so really want people to be able to take our survey, sign up for notifications, stay involved, and we'll try and find new opportunities to reach out. But with that, I'll pass back.
Well, Aaron just took all of my lines, but that's okay. You're getting some links that are being added to the chat right now by Devra. First is a link to sign up for notifications. So just to make sure that you're included as a part of this process as we move forward, we encourage you to add yourself to receive our notifications about the process. There's also a link to a SurveyMonkey survey. We currently have it available in English, and we'll be following up to folks who sign up for notifications with the ability to fill it out in other languages as well. We're just wrapping up translation. So think of this as a sneak peek, and we'll get the full set of surveys out shortly and have those open for a couple of weeks. And then we also encourage you to check out the website for the Homelessness Strategic Plan. That's also now in the chat, where you can get some background information and updates. Again, you can reach the home-based team with any other questions or feedback about the community process at cityofalameda@homebasedccc.org. We've also got the City of Alameda project manager, Amanda Gerke. Her email is also up on the screen and is available as well. So thank you all so much for your participation this evening. We know this is a long haul for a kickoff meeting, a lot to unpack as we continue through the process, but we're really glad that everyone was able to join us for this first community meeting around the homelessness strategic plan for the city of Alameda. So again, thank you to our speakers this evening. It was so great to hear from the mayor and to hear from Anna. Thank you to our interpreters this evening for their incredible work, as well as all of you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening, and we'll be in touch.